I don't know if I'll have time to finish this. If someone finds my phone, the password is 2746. You can take everything, just please post this somewhere, anywhere. They can't do this to anyone else. His name is Renan. When I moved in, he was just a quiet guy with a black backpack and hollow eyes. Never smiled, never left his room after 2 a.m. I thought he was just an introvert. But last night, while he was in the shower, I heard something coming from his room. Not music, not a conversation. It was a prayer, repeated, almost sobbing, in a language that shouldn't exist. I recorded a bit of it. I'm too scared to listen again. There are symbols scratched beneath his bed. I found my name in one of them, written in blood. I didn't know how to react. I freaked out and tried to ignore Renan. Earlier tonight, the doorknob turned slowly. No knocking, no calling my name. Just turning, like he was checking if I was still awake. Like he was checking if I was still awake. I ran and locked the door, pushed the dresser against it. The sound stopped. But now there are footsteps in the hallway. He's pacing back and forth. Sometimes he stops right in front of the door. Just stands there, silent. Then goes back to the kitchen. Except I heard two voices. One was his. The other one? I don't know. It couldn't be the TV. It's impossible. There's someone else here. Maybe more than one. I didn't hear the front door open, let alone close. Someone got in, and I don't know how. Renan isn't alone. I don't know what they're planning. I don't know if they're planning something for me. I never should have found out. I live on the 3rd floor. No one gets in through the window. But maybe I'll have to go out that way. I just called the police. The operator told me to stay calm. Said they're sending a patrol. But I know this neighborhood. It'll take time. Maybe too much time. I tried texting my sister. Just the simple, something's wrong. But the message wouldn't send. Then my screen froze. Not cracked, not glitched. Just stuck. Like something didn't want me to speak out. When it finally cleared, All my past messages with her were gone. Like, I never had a conversation with her in the first place. I told myself it was panic, that I was imagining things. But then the light flickered. Not like a power surge. Every bulb dimmed at once. Slow, deliberate. Like the entire apartment was holding its breath. The window's too high to just jump. I don't know if I'll make it. So I'm leaving this here. They're trying to break in. Pounding. Like they're ready to tear the door off its hinges. If I disappear, I want someone to find this. I want someone to understand what's going on. What they're doing. I can't be the only one. One more time. His name is Renan. We live at 1342 Hollow Creek Drive. Building apartment 2 in Portland, Oregon. He's white, 5'10", blonde hair, and eyes that never seem to blink. He might look harmless, but he's not. Please, find them. The dresser won't hold much longer.
I didn't intend to become a hoarder. One day, I just woke up and my house was full. Junk mail, clothes, trash. They all stacked up, little by little. And by the time I realized I had a problem, it was already too late. I wasn't like some of those people you see on TV. I wasn't compelled to keep all these things. I was just too depressed to clean up after myself and got in too deep. I was fine with that. I had little paths through my house where I could walk without disturbing the trash, and if I just ignored it, then I could pretend it wasn't even there. But lately, something has been happening that I cannot ignore. At night, when I'm lying down in bed, I can't help but feel the dark is moving. When I'm lying down, I look up into the dark, and it's almost like there are small waves rippling through the room. But by the time I get up and turn on the lights, everything is normal. At first I thought maybe there was a gas leak. Like maybe I'm huffing fumes and my vision's getting blurry. Or maybe some of the garbage in my room started rotting and releasing spores which were making me loopy. I finally figured it out when I decided to get an app from my phone. I was able to hook up a system where I could turn on the lights to my room without having to get up and flip the switch. So I went to bed and I waited. Sure enough, before too long, the dark was moving. I slowly pulled out my phone, brought up the app, and turned on the lights. Only something funny happened. The lights turned on, but my room was still dark. Then I saw a flutter, and I understood what I was looking at. Roaches. Millions of them. Enough to turn the walls and ceiling of my room black. Years of trash piling up had led to an infestation. It took them a moment, but they scattered, hiding under any piece of trash they could find. In a moment, my room looked normal, but I knew they were there. I immediately went out to the closest Walmart that was open and purchased as many bug bombs as I could. The trash was one thing, but I drew the line at bugs. In my room, I laid out some old newspaper and set down the bug bombs. I stopped when I heard a fluttering behind me. There, on the wall, the roaches had arranged themselves, spelling out the word "stop." What the fuck? I reached to pull the release on the bug bombs, but they shifted and now spelled "final warning." I pulled the release and ran to the door, but it slammed shut, being pushed by a mass of roaches. The fumes were immediately nauseating. As I choked, the roaches shifted one last time and spelled out, "die." After a long and tired day, I left my window open to feel the nice summer air. I know it sounds weird, but I enjoyed the warmth on my skin rather than the cold while going to sleep. Opposite of my father, who wanted our thermostat at freezing temperatures for him to slumber, one of the many things in the house he had control over.
Don't touch the thermostat.
He was one of those types of dads. But while most fathers would playfully kid around about those types of rules, he did not. Any type of stepping out of line my father would notice from me or my mother, he would make us pay for it severely, using all forms of abuse.
Turn the thermostat down.
My father texted me in the middle of the night as I almost drifted to sleep. My PTSD of not being punctual of his requests and paying dearly for it kicked in as I jerked out of bed. I began following his orders and made my way downstairs. But I stopped when I received another text message from my father.
Turn the thermostat down right now, James. I mean it.
He texted again. He was angry. I remember what this would mean. I stared at the thermostat, knowing the punishment that would await for me if I didn't follow his command. But the fear was slowly leaving me.
James, turn the damn thermostat down. It's burning up.
He sent this message in all caps. I stood staring at the thermostat, not making a move. In my head, I was finally standing up to him, waiting. I heard footsteps come from upstairs now, from his bedroom. Tears began unknowingly filling my eyes.
James,
He sent again. The footsteps made its way downstairs, revealing to be my mother. She stared at me, almost reading my face.
James, please, it's hot. I'm burning up.
He texted. I looked over at the obituary my mother had left on the nightstand from earlier today. My father's face on the cover. That's right, old man. Burn in hell. I sent back. This began around the time that my husband Danny decided to stop smoking. He was like a different person after he started the clinical trial. After a week of taking the pills, he became irritable and jittery, yelling at me, our dog. A few days later, when I'd walked into the basement and flipped the lights on, I screamed, dropping the laundry. Danny had been standing there in the dark at the bottom of the stairs, this odd little grin on his face, something unreadable in his eyes as he stared up at me. In the past, I might have laughed it off, but something about that look on his face terrified me. I hadn't seen him for hours before that. Had he been down there the entire time, standing motionless in the dark, waiting? It was the first time he'd smiled since the trial began. After that, the pranks began to escalate. No, that isn't the right word. Prank implies harmlessness. I realized it after the nudge he'd given me towards the steep drop-off when hiking. He caught my wrist just as I'd let out a shriek. But I'll never forget the feeling of my feet losing purchase. The moment of weightlessness as he'd studied my face, seeing something written on it that he seemed to like. He'd simply replaced one addiction with another. There was no denying it. He enjoyed hearing me scream. I decided to talk to Danny about it. I bit the bullet one evening and opened up to him about how I felt about the situation, about how he was upsetting me. His reaction was different than I expected. He seemed downcast as I spoke, as if he was truly sorry. He sighed, placing his head in his hands. I promise that I'll stop. And it seemed that he meant it. He was noticeably quieter over the next couple of weeks, but he seemed to return to his normal, loving self. Until yesterday. We both had to take a separate car home, And when that happens, we like to have a little race to see who can get there first. As I turned the corner onto our street, I saw him pulling into the driveway, waving with a small grin. He entered the house, and I quickly followed suit moments later. As I walked in, I expected to see him in the hallway. Surprisingly, he wasn't there. I moved into the living room, trying to discern where he had disappeared to. "Danny," I called out. No response. I wandered through the house, checking all conceivable hiding places, while simultaneously calling his name. He wasn't anywhere. I was worried that he'd sneak up on me, but after a while, I would have gladly accepted that. As I passed by the kitchen again, I noticed something that definitely wasn't there moments ago. A pink sticky note with a message scribbled onto it. "If I killed you, would you scream?"
Moving out is hard for everyone. On top of it all, I was going through a crisis of faith. Believing in God had always given me comfort, but seeing people in pain all around the city put a pin in that. Still, a part of me wondered if my early stage atheism meant I was going to hell. It was all just much. The nightmares started innocently enough. I dreamed about my alarm not going off. The professor told me I had to go meet him for supper to make up for being late. But the meal consisted entirely of tomatoes. Their all-consuming, pulsating red hurt my eyes. "Don't just sit there." Someone put their hand on my shoulder. "Eat. He is watching you." I can't," I wept. "I'm allergic and... I woke up to my alarm going off. My eyes were filled with tears. I laughed and went to class extra early. The next night, I dreamed about my dad trying to kill me. "Forgive me, Father." I closed my eyes. "For I have sinned, but don't hurt me." He gave me a solemn smile. "I have to, Princess. He is watching you." He carved me up. My blood pulsated in the same rhythm as the red light around us. I woke up crying. "Are you okay?" my roommate asked that morning. "Yeah, Jeff," I yawned. "I just haven't been sleeping well. You know the drill." Jeff, who was studying at the same university, nodded sadly. "I dreamed I had to do an oral exam while being nailed to a cross. So, in conclusion, I whimpered as someone drove a nail through my palm. Creatures were dancing in the red light, dirty, cold creatures. They had the faces of the homeless. The woman with the hammer next to me was the one I gave an apple yesterday. "Help me," I whispered. "Please."
"I can't,"
she screeched.
"He is watching."
I woke up. Tears streamed down my face. 3 nightmares in 3 nights. And the same sentence all over. "God," I whispered, Are you mad at me?" Silence. I was alone. No one watching, just me. The tears and a red pulsating. Wait. I found it soon enough. A lonely camera. I stared at it, but not for too long. Moving out is hard. Finding an apartment is worse. Especially if you're a young girl who wants to study in a big city. Luckily for me, I had a great landlord. Jeff. Trust fund baby Jeff, who had bought his own place and was looking for a roommate. We only had one thing in common. We studied at the same uni. I was in physics and he, a biochemist. I looked it up. He is researching effects of certain hallucinogens on the brain. I put the camera right back and went to bed. Because, let's be honest, where else am I gonna find an apartment I can afford?
Some time ago, I had decided to go on a little personal vacation out into the woods of northern Arizona. I was experiencing a sort of malaise that was really messing with my creative flow. And I needed a chance to really knuckle down and just enjoy the natural world again. I'd spent 6 days out in the wilderness, just enjoying the feeling of being in nature. But the night of day 7 was one I will never forget. Noise. Something was waking me up. Groggily, I rolled over and looked at my phone. It was ringing. I looked to the top of it and blinked. No signal. That made sense. I had come out here for the isolation. A chance to clear my head and make some music again. So, why was my phone ringing? How was my phone ringing? I stared at the number as my phone rang incessantly. An unknown caller. I heaved a tired sigh, swiped to answer, and croaked blearily. Hello?
You need to be ready. It knows you're there.
and it's already here. It has come for you," came the voice on the other line. Who is this? Who am I speaking to?" I asked, the exhaustion beginning to leave my voice. "Be ready. It will be there soon. Don't open the door." The line went dead. My phone blinked, and the words "signal lost" flashed on the screen. Don't open. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and wearily watched my phone, waiting to see if it would ring again. "Must be losing it," I murmured, placing my phone back on the nightstand and rolling back over to go to sleep. That's when the house thundered. Booming knocks shook the glass of the windows and rattled the glassware. Jesus, fuck! I spun to the door of my room, and my mouth dropped. My door was closed, but it was shaking, like something was trying to get in. Three knocks in short succession thundered against my bedroom door. I didn't remember locking it. The only door I locked was the front. It was the only one I figured I needed to out here. The angered knocking came again. 3 strong blows, and the rattling began anew. It shook the door, and as I watched, I saw the frame begin to crack. My phone rang, and the rattling stopped. Sparing a glance, I snatched it off the nightstand and looked at the number. Unknown caller again. Shakily, I swiped to answer the call and brought the phone to my ear, saying nothing. "It knows you're in there. It isn't going to be polite for long. Get under the bed. Hide." Then the line went dead again. "Signal lost." I looked at the cracking doorframe and wasted no time taking this mysterious caller's advice. Quickly, I crawled under the bed and watched. It was only minutes. I knew it was only minutes, but it felt like hours. I stared at the door, terror wrapping its cold arms around my gut. My breathing became ragged as my eyes remained glued to the door. It wasn't moving. There was no knocking. Had the caller been wrong this time? Was it done? Had it just given up? What was it? Questions raced through my skull, each firing out of the cannon of doubt before the next one could be rationalized. Could any of this be rationalized, though? Something had called me up and warned me of something else in my house. Now that something else was just outside my door. I couldn't explain it, but I had this feeling. Like whatever it was that was out there was waiting for me to make a move. Like we were in some kind of terrible chess game. So I watched. I waited beneath that bed for agonizing minutes. The sounds began shortly after that. Soft, scratching noises, almost inaudible from my position. The one my signalless savior alleged would keep me safe. I never let my gaze drift from the door, and I'm glad I kept it there, because watching what happened next defied logic. The door itself began to bulge inward. I could hear the wood splintering as the center continued to bubble toward me. Then it exploded. Debris and lethal wood scrap fired throughout the bedroom. I wasn't spared when this happened. My hiding place provided shelter from the brunt of the door's destruction. But I was peppered with fragments of splintered wood that dug themselves into my skin. I wanted to cry out in pain, but the sight of what was beyond caught the scream in my throat. There, standing in the doorway, I saw a pair of feet. Massive legs that must have been at least 3 feet across themselves. But that wasn't the strangest thing. The skin was no tone I had ever seen on a human. It was this mossy green and brown, and the texture was so wooden, like a pair of tree trunks. Slowly, the thing in my doorway ambled its way into my room. I could hear its heavy, ragged breaths like some sort of hunting beast. It was at the foot of my bed. The scent of moss and pine clung heavily to me. But there was another scent I caught as it just stood there. Rot. Death. The pungent odor of decaying meat clung to the creature's wooden legs. I had to cover my nose and mouth to keep from retching as it circled the bed. Was it going to throw it up and pull me out from underneath? Was this monster just waiting for the perfect chance to tear me to shreds? What the fuck was it? The feet turned, and suddenly my blood felt like ice. My whole body shivered as the temperature in the room suddenly plummeted. I could see my breath as this thing let out an ear-shattering roar. I can't place the sound, but it reminded me of a mixture between a jet engine's roar and a grizzly bear's growl. I watched from my hiding place as the nightstand was lifted and launched across the room. I could only hear the thing shatter as the creature tore the place apart. My eyes were discs in my head. My hands were clamped over my mouth to hide any sounds of breathing or whimpering. But just as it spun to face the bed, it stopped. Instead, whatever it was turned and shambled out of my room. What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? They were the only words I could choke out as the creature disappeared from my sight. Then the phone rang again. Terrified, I seized it, trying to silence the ringer. I swiped to answer the caller and immediately began to whisper into the phone. What the fuck was that? Who are you? How the fuck did you know it was coming? There's no time for any of that. It knows where you are. You need to run. Jump out the window and keep running until you lose sight of this place. Keep going until you reach the highway. Don't come back until morning. Are you fucking kidding me? That thing's huge. I can't outrun it. You have to. It's the only way you win this. Then the call cut out. Signal lost. I steadied my breathing and psyched myself up, shooting out from under the bed as I heard the dreadful roar again. It was coming back. I didn't have time to think, no time to find shoes. I bolted toward the now shattered window and dove, slicing my arms and legs against the shards of glass. Adrenaline coursed through my veins, urging me to ignore everything else. I ran, bolted through the forest as fast as my legs would carry me. Twigs and rocks tore into my feet, but I kept going. Even as my chest began to tighten and my lungs began to feel like there was a fire being set beneath them, I ran. I couldn't hear the monster behind me anymore. Maybe it stayed at my cabin? Maybe it kept looking elsewhere. Every ounce of me just hoped I had gotten lucky. But the voice on the phone told me to keep running until I hit the highway. So I did. I ran through miles of backcountry woods, never stopping, pushing myself far beyond anything I thought I was capable of, just to get away from whatever the hell that thing was. I could see the darkness starting to push its way into my vision. My legs were beginning to feel like they were made of stone. My body ached and every muscle screamed for me to stop. But I kept pushing. When I burst through the tree line onto the road, I stopped. Almost instantly, I began sobbing and I dropped to my knees. I gazed up at the moon as my phone began to ring again. I pulled it out of my pocket and looked at the number. Before I could do anything else, darkness overtook me. I woke the following day in a hospital bed. Apparently, someone had discovered my unconscious and bloody body on the side of the road. The sheriffs had a million questions, none of which I had a good answer for. They thought my story sounded like something I had made up. But when they went to the cabin, Many of them were singing a different tune.
It looks like you got lucky and escaped one of the biggest bears I've ever seen,
one of them said.
Didn't find it, but the claw marks in the woods made it look like a damn dinosaur. Grizzlies are huge, son, but not even they leave marks like that.
When I asked about the phone calls, they just shook their heads.
There's no cell service that far out. You might have imagined that part and everything.
It took me over a week to recover from my injuries. I was told I had lacerated a tendon in my right arm, and that it had never quite functioned the way it had before. That was the arm I used to play guitar. And to this day, there are still certain notes my fingers just can't quite nail anymore. The day of my discharge, I was given the things that they had found me with, and given an escort back to the cabin. The debris was mostly cleaned up by the time I arrived to collect my things. But the damage to the building itself was visible. And the cops were right. Whatever the hell it was that came after me that night must have been massive to leave the marks it did so deep in the wood. I checked my phone as I crossed the threshold of the house to gather my things, and sighed. No signal. Well, thanks, whoever you were, I muttered, gathering what stuff was left after the attack. To this day, I don't know who called me or what it was that was in that cabin. But frankly, I don't think I want to know.